And now I need to be dynamic. There isn't a topic that I'm more excited about than this one. And any of you that know me know that I say next generation leader every other sentence. This year, through Chamber 2025, as you've heard, we're launching the SME Institute. It's going to be one of our largest growth engines. We're going to grow 62% through our new offerings. I'm very excited to tell you we're going to grow 40% this year. And half of that growth is through the SME Institute. We're going to provide, as you know, services to SMEs of all sizes and maturity and sectors. And while we've all advocated for SMEs, we know we can do even more to support their success. These services that we're going to offer, as you've seen, are vetted advisors, industry experts, and agency partners for training, mentorship, and networking, which we uniquely can do, as you know, as the Chamber network. And members of chambers throughout our network, chambers and boards of trade, can take advantage of these services at a discount, because we wanted to use our chamber network to reach and support the highest numbers of SMEs. So with the SME Institute, we want to enhance the offering of every chamber, every board of trade in our network, and that's what this program can do, so that it benefits all of you, but also, importantly, benefits SMEs. In creating the SME Institute, we did our homework. Through waves of research, and more recently with emerging data from our Business Data Lab on SMEs, we have new insights into the changing dynamics of SMEs. So one area that's really important is to service next generation leaders, high-tech, high-growth companies that I always say are doing things you can't even imagine. You read through the list and it's like, I don't even know what this company does. And they're breaking all the rules too. So for example, you can't judge their size based on their number of employees. All the old rules don't apply. And they're also fearless in how quickly they are launching, how quickly they're moving on opportunities. However, the market research that we conducted revealed that next generation business leaders in the high growth sector, which is a key engine of the future of our economy, they don't know us as well. And this lack of presence creates an imperative for all of us to increase our value and our visibility with next gen business leaders. This panel is going to take you inside some of these growth sectors of the economy to understand more about their needs. I'd like to now ask our guest speakers to join me on the stage. So first, Sueling Ching, the President and CEO, who I know all of you know, of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Corey Ellis, co-founder and CEO of the Growcer. Karen Hamberg, partner in financial advisory and clean technology at Deloitte. Interesting fact, Karen actually used to be one of my clients when I was in the consulting business, so it's wonderful to see her again. And Ryan Hardy, co-founder, president, and CEO of Getit Technologies. And our moderator, Ben Mulroney, co-founder and chief impact officer of Orchard Technologies. Now, Ben is a household name, and he's regarded as one of Canada's premier TV hosts. After a 20-year career hosting Canadian Idol, at the time, Canada's #1 primetime television show, creating and hosting and producing E-Talk, Canada's #1 entertainment show, and anchoring Your Morning, wait for it, the #1 national morning show. He's very good at #1. Ben is bringing his amazing talent now to the business world. He joins us here today as co-founder and chief impact officer at Orchard Technologies, where he helps his company achieve their goal of being the most inclusive financial institution in the country. Orchard is going to transform payments and banking with innovative small business solutions. It's fair to say you're massively overqualified for this role in moderating this panel, and so we're just thrilled that Ben would join us. Over to you.
Thank you, Gayla. Thank you, everyone. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you, when you walked in and saw my face plastered on our booth, were wondering what the heck is Ben Mulroney doing here. I used to like to say that I was a combination of Ryan Seacrest, Mary Hart, and any host of a morning show with far less pay. And when my CEO brought me on board, I said, listen, to ease my transition out of television, I'm going to need to see my face everywhere I go. So can you please plaster it on our Chamber of Commerce booth, just to make me feel better. But I do want to say, we want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for being so inviting. Orchard is less than a year old, and everyone from Mr. Beatty through Rocco, Gayla, and everyone in between has been so wonderful and warm. And we invite you, if you haven't come to our booth yet, come talk to us. Our CEO, Robert Ronning, conceived of and designed Orchard with the Chamber in mind, with its membership in mind, and we believe that our cost plus zero model is going to be the most transformational thing to happen in payments probably ever. So come hear our story. We'd love to get to know you. And on that note, let's jump right in. And so thank you. Thanks to everybody. It's been great getting to know you a little bit backstage and during our calls. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Karen, I want to start with you. Great to see you. Great to have you here. And we want to start to understand sort of emerging trends that you've been seeing in your work with your clients, because we all agree the work that we do is in a rapidly changing marketplace. You have to identify critical opportunities, critical challenges. Decisions have to be made on a dime. You got to be able to pivot and turn. Talk to me about key factors that companies need to identify to ensure their business success. Oh, and before you go on, just want to let everybody know, before you answer the question, the goal here is to have a real conversation, not a back and forth between a moderator and a guest, but we want to make sure that everybody on the panel is engaged. If you have anything to add, feel free to jump in after the question's been answered, and let's just have a good time up here. Karen, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you, Gayla, for that warm welcome and the opportunity to speak to you. So I joined Deloitte in May of 2022, so I have been a partner for 6 months. And when they came calling, I had sort of the opportunity to take a year sabbatical between my last job in clean tech and joining Deloitte. They asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, Deloitte needs a climate tech, a clean tech practice. And they said, well, we've kind of got one. We audit financial statements, we help with tax, we do, some incentives and grants. And I said, who's working on commercialization at industrial scale? And they said, okay, tell me more. We kept talking, and I said, this is the opportunity. Who is in the boardroom with, the large emitters of Canada, with the people who have set net zero targets but are then struggling to meet them? Deloitte, I want to come in and build a practice. And they said, by all means, come in. So there's an example right there of an organization that took a bit of a flyer on someone with no professional services experience, very, very deep clean technology experience, and they saw a market opportunity. And we often, there's going to be much more coming out about it, but we've said there's something here. We don't know what it is, but there's something here. So Ben, you're exactly right. And maybe I'll just speak a bit about the net zero space, the climate space, because that's where I'm most familiar. Companies are ambitious, they are willing to assume some risk, but there are some market factors that are really gating the development, the deployment, and the scaling, particularly of climate tech solutions, right? Costs are coming down too slowly. No tech has emerged as the standard, particularly in hard-to-abate sectors. Project economics are weak. And on the other side, some of these climate tech firms, your value proposition, your total cost of ownership, that is still untested and unproven. So it's pretty tough for someone to make an investment. But if you think about Canada's clean tech sector, there's about 1,100 firms, 3.1% of GDP, 7.1 billion in exports. And we often hear, our colleagues in the government of Canada, they will say, the global clean tech opportunity is a $2.5 trillion opportunity. And what's Canada's goal for some of that? There's one goal that is quantitative for the climate sector, and it's 20 billion in exports by 2025. We're at 7.1 billion, 30% growth year over year. We've actually come down in those export numbers for certain reasons, right? But who gets fired up or excited or visionary about, 20 billion by 2025? People say, is that good? Does that make us leaders? Where are we now? Should it be more? And I would argue it needs to be far more ambitious. The sector is really studied. It is really celebrated. It's really recognized. There's a lot of talk in amongst industry associations and incubators, accelerators, challenges, innovation hubs, mentorship programs. And we keep saying, all right, who's talking? Where are the customers, right? Where is big corporate Canada? Where's industrial Canada in this? And that's where I think the Chamber has such an opportunity. And so in a meeting with other tech clients, we asked a question, when you think about Deloitte, what do you think? And, you probably think that we're great at tax and audit and assurance. And they said, we actually don't think about you at all. And so there's a lesson for the Chamber in that too, right? That these companies, their exposure to the big, the big players in this space, you may not be as well known as you think you are. And I've certainly found that to be the case with Deloitte. So if it takes 12 to 15 years to commercialize a clean tech solution in Canada, we just don't have that kind of time for our climate objectives. The two companies in Canada that have revenue above $100 million in clean tech, they're both in Vancouver. One is Ballard, 45 years old. One is Westport, 30 years old. All right? Westport's first patent, 1989, commercialized with Volvo trucks in 2017. This takes a long time, and we don't have it. So here's the role for corporate Canada, for the chambers, and for others, right? We need this coherent commercial ecosystem where there are suppliers and partners and customers and all of the value chain elements that are needed. So I'm going to suggest that the Chamber, you don't duplicate this, right? There's lots of people looking for the next great idea, putting in some seed money. You should be thinking about a 2030 timeline, not 2050. You should be finding those companies. There's probably about 25 that are really ready for commercialization at industrial scale, that are customers all around the world, but not in Canada. I think that's where the opportunity is, and to make those connections to your corporate members. And so choose wisely. Find where your, obviously your strengths. You have such leverage, network, and partnerships to take advantage of. And I'm going to suggest find the ways to connect those clean tech companies that have products right now for 2030 with those corporate customers or with those corporate clients, and then figure out who's the up-and-comers and making sure that they're in your network as well.
Great. Thank you. I saw Ryan nodding a lot in that. What did you take away from what Karen was saying?
I find it interesting. I'm not in the same level of expertise and her company and background. Just a small startup ourselves, but connectivity being that pulse that she touched on, it's so important across all sectors. We do food delivery and move commerce for very small businesses at the smallest scale you could imagine. Cupcakes and cases of beer, which heart of the community, right? Aside from that, when we hear that, and from clean tech all the way across to local commerce, the connectivity that needs to happen between small enterprise, large enterprise, and the money that can come from government, proper funding, large enterprise that is starting to invest in agile small startups that do move fast. I think what we're going to see happen in the next 5 to 10 years is this acceleration of small companies growing fast but properly. We're coming out of this hyperscale, it's about sustainability, profitability as a company, but agility is a thing that these small ideas and companies and smaller companies bring to the table, and I think that's what's going to shift a lot in the next 10 years. So I feel that in our space as well as her larger space.
So Sueling, I want to come to you before we come to Corey with the next question, because we've been talking about these companies willing to take big swings, big risks. Ottawa, we know it for tourism, we know it for government, and over the years, it's been known for various iterations of its tech industry. There have been, we're living in sort of the era of the ascension of Shopify, but 25 years ago, it was completely, it was different companies ruling the landscape. Talk to me about companies here in Ottawa taking those big swings, sometimes not hitting a home run. but the industry in this city is still coming back, and tech being in the DNA of a city like Ottawa.
Yeah, so tech is very important to our economic growth, and we're a leader in many areas. One of the key measures of tech growth in a city is the tech talent concentration. And so there was a report released just last summer of looking at 50 top cities of North America, and Ottawa actually has one of the highest tech talent concentrations at over 11%. So it's something that as a community and economic partners that we're extremely invested in and have created great infrastructure for, and looking for ways to make connections and invest and create partnerships. So it's one of our top 3 economic drivers.
Corey, I want to come to you next because, I've got it written in my question. I am essentially explaining your own business to you, and I suspect you could do a better job at telling everybody here about the Growcer. But, you and your partner, Alita, came up with this concept. I'd love to hear about it. But I'd also love to hear from you about, jumping into an industry like that, in a sector like that, can be fraught with dangers. And I want to know about the challenges that you see that lie ahead, as well as what you think you as a company need to do, without giving any too many secrets away, but what you've got to do to sustain the growth that you're enjoying.
Sure, thanks. And hi everyone, thanks for the opportunity to speak today. So to tell you a little bit about Growcer, just to give you a background on who we are a tech company that's focused on creating vertical farming systems. So we've created a modular turnkey system. We've deployed it in 10 of 13 provinces and territories. So the only ones on our list, if those of you represent either PEI, the Yukon, or Newfoundland, would love to hear from you, because we've got about 60 farms now that we've deployed in the last 7 years or so. Essentially, our vision for Canada is that we believe that there'd be a stronger local economy if in every neighborhood there's a local farmer that can supply food for that neighborhood, rather than importing produce from Arizona, Mexico, and what have you. And we think that also would be better for the environment anyway. So that's a little bit about Growcer. Really honestly, our engagement with the Ottawa Board of Trade started fairly recently. Maybe to speak a little bit to that first on kind of how I see the role of a company like Growcer kind of interacting with our local Board of Trade. One of the great values that I've seen in the last few months is our local Chamber of Commerce being kind of a connector and a convener of local peers. Building a business like this, we've been doubling in size every year, year over year. We bootstrapped the business until just a few months ago, so it's a really, really, really hard thing to do, and it feels very lonely to do that. Even though I have a business partner, both of us together, it does feel like you're alone sometimes, but we recently participated in a cohort of 40 under 40 and met other peers who are going through the same things as us, and it just feels good to be surrounded by people who can help you and enable your success, and also just exchange war stories with. But to your question, Ben, on kind of where some of our challenges are, I'll be very tactical with one thing that we're facing right now, and that I expect we'll continue to face, and that is the global battle for talent. And we've been just facing some structural barriers, and I'll give you a couple examples. We all know that the labor market is quite tight, and so we've started to look abroad for talent, and COVID has made us all remote first, and that's been a huge value in looking abroad for the talent and the folks that we want to join our team. But recently we wanted to hire a senior finance executive, and after searching for 3 or 4 months, all we could find, we were down to a list of candidates, and one of them was from Australia, and he wanted to move to Ottawa in order to work for Growcer. So he wanted to, despite our remote first, he wanted to work here, and he has a CPA, and the wait list to get a visa was 6 months long. So in order for him, we could give him an offer today and he'll get a job in 6 months. So what he ended up having to do was move to Ottawa, rent an RV, move his wife and 5 kids. They drove to Buffalo in order to cross. The only place where they could process their visa was Niagara Falls. And so that took, 5 days. We had to, talk it through. And so
you got to really want to move to Ottawa to do that.
I know. Or you've really got to love the mission we're on. Maybe a little combination of the two. But I just use that as an example because, when we're fighting that hard for talent and it's that difficult to try to attract the best of the best globally, that just puts up barriers that I don't believe should exist in terms of, we want Canada to be competitive globally, which means we need the very best talent onshored and working for our companies. And, so I don't know what the policy lens is on that and what the reasons are, but zoom back 3 years, we were hiring folks with master's degrees and PhDs out of other countries, and it was extremely fast. We could get people in 3 weeks. So what has changed in the last 3 years or whatnot? I don't know, but we've got to go back to where we were a few years ago.
Does anyone else down the line sort of feel the same thing, that trying to get the best talent is just harder today than it has been in the past?
I almost screamed preach like 3 times while he was talking. I feel like we're in similar chambers, echo chambers that we're hearing of the world, and just startup life's a grind. He touched on all the great points. It's a fight for talent, especially when you're not, you don't have the same offering of some of these amazing companies that, are a part of the chambers. It's tough when you have to compete with companies like Kinaxis in Ottawa and Shopify, and as well as companies in his space that are in the farming space, large, huge commercial farming companies. And it's like, hey, you want to take a chance on something brand new that no one's ever done before? It's quite the belief you have to have in your talent there. And then on top of that, if you want good talent, you have to meet their comp packages and all that, because it is that world that's more expensive now too, right?
Yeah. Sueling, I see you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just want to give a shout out to Deloitte, because for us in Ottawa, Deloitte has been, you're not a service provider, you're an economic partner, and we've really experienced that in Ottawa. And so to that point, we actually were just hosted the other night by Deloitte's CEO of Canada and all of the top CEOs of businesses in Ottawa, and they're having, guess what the #1 topic is? Talent. That's the #1 topic for them as well. And so it's a struggle across the board. And I think, what we need is a multifaceted and a multi-partner approach, because there are lots of opportunities that we can, we just hosted a talent summit and we had Stephen Harrington from Deloitte as our keynote. And, there are lots of opportunities with just some shifts in thinking, shifts in programs and policies that we could support our businesses a lot better as communities.
One question I like to ask people all the time: if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about this process that has become a pain point for you in terms of attracting talent, what's that one thing that would make the biggest difference?
Don't put up barriers, I guess. Like it's hard enough, as you were saying, to attract the people in the first place to work for a company that is starting up. The last thing we need is then, barriers that follow that make it even harder to get those people through the door. So I would say just, allow us to smooth out the process to bring people into our companies and working for us.
Can I jump in on the talent piece, because there's another dimension to it. So when Ryan and Corey here are going to be growing their companies, building their companies, attracting this talent, raising money, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm hoping, being super successful. All right, fantastic. The capability of the management team that they've put together is going to be really heavily scrutinized. So they'll be looking at not just, you and your background and your credentials, but the ability for you to do what you say you're going to do. So there's another need for talent piece in the form of mentorship almost, whereby young executives are coached. There's not many people in Canada who have done this, and I found that whether they're in clean tech or ag tech or biotech, they're very generous with their time, with their experience, with their coaching. And so that's one of the things too, is to find those opportunities where you can learn from others.
Well said. I was going to add to Corey's great points just about being open and not putting up barriers, being creative in that process. Well, we're in a modern world that's just gone through a pandemic, work from home, all these other things that now tie into talent. Being open with people and what they're going through and their, with their life personally, with their family. I think if you can be creative, one thing we've been doing with our company is hybrid jobs are now a thing. They might be in the office one day a week.
What did you say?
Hybrid jobs.
Hybrid
and when
jobs.
I say that, I mean, we have people that work in sales and customer success, 2 totally different departments. And it's because sales is too much 5 days a week. It's a heavy, so by being creative, we give someone an opportunity to go do data entry for a day and work from home, and they like it. It helps them recalibrate. And by that, it allows us to be even more agile as a startup. And these are ways we're just giving people more freedom that, a larger company wouldn't be able to do. It's like, no, this is your department, you stay here, this is your leader. You know, like that's how it is. It's a much more open concept, if you will.
Sueling?
This is an exciting time for SMEs, actually. Despite the challenges, it's a really exciting time because of technology, communications, a lot of technology out there that's what Stephen Harrington calls is cheap and cheerful. The ability to be nimble as opposed to a lot of other firms that have to, take a long time to make change. It's really an exciting time for SMEs.
Ryan, we're going to move on to you, and again, we're doing what we did with Corey. Why don't you tell us about Getit? But when I was reading about it, and you've jumped in with your business partner Ben Lacroix into the mobile ordering, pickup, and delivery world, I thought that's a crowded space, and it's not just crowded with a lot of players. I mean, they've got deep pockets. They're established. They're not going anywhere. Talk to me about Getit, and explain to me how you thought you could differentiate yourself, what your value prop, how that was going to make a difference in the market. This, to me, is a really fascinating story.
Elevator pitch, go. Yeah, that's it, right? I'll echo a lot of similar things that Corey has been through with his company. For us, it is a crowded space. For us, we're trying to create multiple edges that make our company sustainable for the future. And ways we're doing that is we offer both technology services as well as people services. So to touch on that, our company was originally created by Ben Lacroix. It was an idea by my business partners out in the crowd somewhere. Hey, Ben. We also have Chantal, our VP here, who also used to work with the Board of Trade and is a great community leader in regards to helping us connect this technology to people. So shout out to both of them for their hard work. We're roughly 2 years old as a platform, but the company is about 2.5 years old. Ben, when I met him, we met networking at a Tech Tuesday in Canada. So how's that for an Ottawa story? I'm sure there's a lot of people in this room that have partaken in that great event, put on by the Matthews family, Canada North BIA, all the great companies there. We met in that engine, if you will, of buzz and people and bright minds in Canada, which is booming. So for us, as we met, Ben pitched this great idea for in-seat ordering at stadiums, Red Blacks games, Senators games, etc. How many times have you missed a goal or a touchdown or, the encore song because you had to go and get something, right? So it was a great idea, very simple, very clean. Pandemic hit 3 months later, essentially. No one in stadiums for almost 2 years. I do have to tell you that when stadiums and businesses and venues that are so tied to the community are put in a crisis like that, where all their revenue lines are gone, they weren't really thinking about digitally transforming their businesses. It was more like survival is key. So Ben and I together, teamed up and said, let's go test this in the community. The community needs digital connectivity and transformation now. So, with some pivots and some work over 6 to 12 months, we said we can serve our community, retail, food and beverage, with local delivery that's also tied to technology. There's a lot of great last mile delivery companies in Ottawa. There's a lot of great payment companies. We've tried to kind of converge the two ideas, which also bulletproofs our business. So now we have small to large enterprise doing delivery with us. So Getit Technologies, as we grow, will eventually go back to venues and enterprise business at that level. But for us, by connecting drivers with fair pay to local businesses who are trying to compete with Amazon and these global competitors who can get things from 100 kilometers away to you faster than a business who has the product a block away. We're really trying to be that David versus Goliath edge against these large competitors. So small businesses, which are hurting the most right now with what the economy is going through, have a fighting chance to consolidate services, have a fair fee, and then have this nimble, agile software that can deliver, sell events and tickets, maybe do both because you have events and hybrid events that we were talking about backstage that might have a gala box tied to it. We really want to offer an all-in-one community marketplace solution that offers these services, and it's nimble, it's agile. Think about the robust offering that Shopify has. We want to do that, but with delivery services tied to it as well.
A conversation I was having with my partners today, and because my eyes have been open to sort of a lot of the dynamics that small businesses have to go through being here at this AGM. And what I said is, I'm learning that thanks to our CEO, who knows the payment space so very well, he knew what we would have to do in order to get to a place where we could eventually launch. And what that means is, we had what we believe is a great idea, but great ideas there's a lot of them out there. But it's how you execute on those ideas, and being here, being part of this AGM, this is part of that execution for us. And I wonder what everyone's nodding. When I say that, when I say, an idea is one thing, but executing an idea is far more important. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll start, sure. So I'll tell a story of where I was previously. I was at a company called Westport Fuel Systems in Vancouver doing heavy-duty liquefied natural gas engines, which are actually, there's 600 LNG fueling stations for heavy-duty trucks in Europe. It's, 5% of market share in China. There's, I think, 5 on the road that's not true. There's probably about 50 on the road in Canada. And so a point, 2013, we had signed a supply agreement with Volvo Trucks, North America and Europe. We had raised, $300 million. We'd done a NASDAQ IPO, and the management team sat around the table and we said, who knows how we're going to turn ourselves into a tier 1 automotive supplier? Because that's what we need to be, and we need to do this fast. And this is a highly competitive market. And at that point, it's talent, right? We had to find executives from General Motors, from other OEMs, from, automotive suppliers to bring in. We had a massive turnover of our executive team because the people that had the great idea, raised the first bit of money, convinced a whole bunch of others to come along on the journey, might not be the ones, and generally aren't the ones that are going to get you to commercialization and scale.
And I would say we lived that firsthand in the early parts of that journey, right? We were bootstrapped, and so it was all about how do you bring money in the door, which means how do you deliver value for customers now? No great idea that can be developed in 3 to 5 years will, fund the business this year, right here and now. So I think we learned that through the School of Hard Knocks, that we had to be really, really laser focused. And the hard part in a lot of businesses, and ours in particular, is that everything is so exciting and it feels worthwhile, right? In the food space, you're doing things that feel good, that are good for people in the community, and it's hard to be ruthless about that and say, we can't do that today, right? Like, let's not do that, even despite all the great benefits. We have to focus on what's going to bring the company to next year to the
The
following
level
year.
of discipline.
Yeah, build it up over time rather than try to leapfrog it too fast.
I'll add onto the train. It's a mixture of all that. I'll tie to one of Sueling's great points from one of her previous comments. For us, what you realize when you get into the space is you find out who's executing quickly. The people that are already there playing the game well, and then all the other bright entrepreneurs and small startups around you that are also trying to do it and then compete with all these factors we've discussed. We're trying to deflect the shiny things that, get exciting. It's like, we could do this today, and it's fast, and we could do it, and it'll add X value to our business. For us, we're trying to very politely and methodically choose those as a team, that this is an edge or a feature or a benefit we're going to add into our offering, and another competitor in our space can't do it as fast. So much time does that add for us to execute another feature, et cetera. And the point that Sueling made that's very true is large companies take a long time to do things, be it adapt for talent, be it change what their offering is. They're large cruise ships turning around compared to a speedboat that is a startup. So if you can keep building that boat as it's going along its journey with execution, with proper resources, thought properly, you're going to get to a point with a smarter, more sustainable company that's not as bloated as some of these competitors that have been in that space for a long time.
Say on behalf of chambers of commerce and other economic partners in the cities and across the country, if we can create an ecosystem where we can leverage the ingenuity, the resilience of entrepreneurs in order to, and address our biggest problems and to create economic growth, that's the pace for us to play. So, congratulations to the Canadian Chamber and the SME Institute for those connections. We do that locally very well as well. The connections, the mentorship, access to information, resources, opportunities, and looking for ways that we can systematically and tactically take down barriers that are barriers to growth.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we're going to end this part of our conversation with you, Sueling, talking about, as a local chamber member, or rather leader, you were here. These partners of yours in your community dealt with the pandemic in the best ways that they possibly could. What did you witness from them in terms of, you talked about ingenuity and resilience. the pandemic tested everyone's ingenuity and their resilience. What did you see, especially in the tech sector here in Ottawa, which is such a defining aspect of this city?
Yeah, what I saw is realizations that we are all connected, and every aspect of our communities and our businesses are connected. Our health is connected to our economy. The success of our businesses is connected to every aspect of our community. And so we really have an opportunity, and we demonstrated how quickly we can work together forward if we'll prioritize progress over perfection. So if we're willing to course correct, what can we achieve? I mean, programs that rolled out to support businesses in weeks would normally have taken years to roll out. Were they perfect? No, but you know what they did? They consulted with us quickly and they made the tweaks quickly because they were forced to do it. So let's not lose that muscle that we've built over the last 2.5 years as we look at what is the next level of economic growth as we face the challenges that we are facing today. And how do we work to we don't need more government more of the time. What we need is radical collaboration between the private sector, between economic partners and the government, so that everybody's in their lane and doing the things they need to do, but that we have a holistic approach so that we bring everybody along.
If I can ask you candidly, some would say we're post-pandemic, others say that we're post-pandemic adjacent.
Right.
Do you feel that collaborative spirit that was foisted upon us during the pandemic, is it still prevalent? Or are we sort of going back to the siloed existence that we probably were experiencing prior to the pandemic?
There is the potential for us to lose it. And that's why as chambers, one thing I think that we realized too over the last couple of years is that we have a very clear role and responsibility in making sure that we all remember what it was like and how we can move together if we need to, and that we need to. We have some very important, urgent matters on the table in front of us. And so we have a responsibility to remind all of us of that consistently, but also is that chambers of commerce have a real part to play in creating what our economic growth plans are in our cities and across our country, and making sure that we are leveraging all of the assets that we have in order to achieve it.
You said we could go back to it, but it does seem in my conversations with chamber leaders that we've been here that the pandemic really did impress a need for change and innovation on the chamber itself, and it does seem that those lessons have been taken to heart. It seems that as the chamber comes out of the pandemic, it is it's almost it's invigorated with an energy. I'm hearing about all these new developments and ambitious plans. Do you have that sense that the chamber has been emboldened by the need that the business community has for the chamber?
100%, and not just what the business community needs, but what the communities need as well. And so I 100% feel that way, and I 100% feel like the business community has now understands why it is so critically important for us to work together and to create an ecosystem that drives economic growth. So what we need to do is make sure that our governments are properly structured to do that. So we have Perrin's panel, and Jan just before us, spoke really about the challenges that we continue to face, some simple policy things that could be changed. And it's not easy for the government in terms of going across jurisdictions and also levels of government in order to achieve these things. So that's something we need to work on together.
Corey, how do you feel coming out of the pandemic, relationship with the chamber? Is it more important to you now than it was before?
Yeah, I would say so. We've been quite involved in other groups, and we're getting to know the chamber better. So in our local ecosystem here in Ottawa, we have a great group at Invest Ottawa that brings together kind of startups. I think, as I was hearing earlier, one of the goals of the Canadian Chamber, but of local chambers as well, is to reach out to the tech community. So if I could speak from personal perspective there, I think something to keep in mind, how your larger members may be different from smaller members like us, is just a question of time horizon. We just, let me put it this way. If you're thinking of what is the value proposition you have for your larger members, it's, thinking a little further out, it's more strategic. It's how do we, connect you to policymakers and so on. For a business leader like me, it's what can you do for me within the next year? Like, what can you change that can help me grow my business, bring my product to market, connect me to suppliers and to your existing partners who might see value in my offering, Like, what can you do for me now? And it's you know, it is self-serving, but it's the reality of trying to survive as a startup. It's, you know, we're living hand to mouth, and you know, we need to, if we think too long term, we're dead, right? And so we need to think kind of 12 months at a time, 24 months at most, and how do we get to the next stage of growth? And if we keep rinsing and repeating that as we've done in the last 7 years, we'll be successful. But I think that connecting, convening part, I think I'll go back to that as big value we've seen in the chamber.
Before we go to the questions on the iPad, does anybody have any last words? No? To the iPad we go. All right. There are no questions asked yet. For shame.
Do we get to the hobby section now?
Well, if anybody has any questions, please use the code AGM 2022.
Ben, while you're there, I was going to say, like, if we have a minute or two to touch on what Corey just said, that's so true. We're in this world now where, you know, it's small companies, small people competing against large companies, and we are all trying to work together. But we have partners that are huge companies that we work with, you know, like large accounting firms, like large law firms that are very connected and tied into the community. I think getting the chamber and boards of trade and RICs, and then, you know, also BIAs and BIZs in certain provinces, for them to understand that for startups, especially fast-growing to hyper-scaling startups, long-term planning is 6 to 12 months. You know, like Corey just said, you know, people always say, what's your pro forma? What's your 3 to 5 year? You're like, we're just trying to survive this quarter.
That's right.
You know, I could show you all the made-up numbers you want for the next 10 years. You know, 25 grand in a grant would change our company's life tomorrow. Oh, okay, well, we'll take you through the 2-month red tape process. Okay, lovely. We hope to be here to receive it. Upon, you know, these are the problems that people like Corey and I face with our businesses, and it is do or die in a lot of those moments. An email could change the whole trajectory of your company in a week because a $15,000 check is held up. It's pretty real in those scenarios, and we are out there in the ocean competing against these large entities, right?
And yet you jump in, and yet you say, I want to compete in this crowded market with these big players, and yet you do it.
Founders are masochists, I think, a little bit, if I'm being honest. And it's, yeah, exactly. And aside from that, it ties into points we mentioned backstage in the green room. You have to have belief. I think it was the COO who mentioned Gayla, and she mentioned that you know, if you don't have 100% belief in what you're doing, and that doesn't trickle through your team, like, don't even bother. And it 100% correct. A very simple point, but so true. If you're not all in, you won't make it. It's that simple.
Sueling?
I want to speak to that idea of creating an environment in our cities and across our country that allows entrepreneurs to feel that they have the confidence that they're going to work within a framework and an ecosystem that is going to support them. The last 2.5 years, the last 2.5 years and today forward, the number one thing has been business confidence. Like, how can we get our entrepreneurs who are responsible for 99% of the jobs across our country to feel as though we've got their backs, and that we're going to keep supporting them, and that we're going to let them market to their own country, for example, you know. And so I think that's a big part of it, is how do we build cities and the country and ecosystems that inspire entrepreneurs to feel confident to go forward.
Yeah, there's an element of educating sometimes educating the policymakers themselves as to why those things are very important. Getting in front of the decision makers at all levels of government to explain just that to them, because sometimes, you know, we support small businesses, a great soundbite, but they don't follow through with policies that actually do anything like that.
The Chamber has really, though, been leading, and Perrin in particular, on this. So I have a federal government appointment. I'm a member of the Industry Strategy Council, and it was put together in June 2020 by Navdeep Bains, who was the minister at the time. And so he said, we've got these high growth sectors. We identified 9 of them. And he said, you know, we need to take this sectoral approach. What does, you know, resources of the future, clean tech, digital, agriculture, you know, advanced manufacturing, tourism and hospitality, what are they going to need? What are their pain points during COVID, and what are they going to need? And so, it was kind of preordained that an organization or that a group called the Industry Strategy Council would come up with an industrial strategy. But we did. We heard that from the thousands of stakeholders that we spoke to, maybe not that exact term, an industry strategy, but a plan, an area of focus, something that that Canada is going to lead on. And to be fair, we're seeing that now with what the government's doing around critical minerals and the EV battery chain and hydrogen to some degree, but that still needs that coordination whereby we ensure that small, medium, and large and giant are all playing together with a degree of focus and ambition for Canada.
We've got a few questions coming in now. Thank you, everybody. And a couple of them are about cybersecurity. So how do your companies handle cybersecurity? These threats can come from anywhere around the world, and they can bring a business to their knees in seconds. So how big of a concern is it for you, and what are you doing to protect yourselves against it?
I'm happy to go first. Cybersecurity. I was going to say awesome. CEOs are great at talking about cybersecurity. Any one of our tech team would be like, please don't let him speak right now. For us, all jokes aside, for us, a big thing that we deal with is protecting consumer data. Okay? We are a startup with a tech team of 3 to 5 engineers at any given time, with co-op programs and great programs that are in Ottawa that we take advantage of. So having 3 to 5 engineers competing against companies with, departments for cybersecurity within their departments. We leverage a lot of third-party relationships with credible businesses in regards to using credible APIs and, leveraging the strengths of these large and giant data companies that we trust. And seeing as that connectivity is starting to happen, it's so cost-effective for us to bulletproof and protect our business, our consumers, our drivers' information, the merchants that we serve. This for us, leveraging on existing cost-effective software solutions is one thing that is helping small businesses scale faster. So for us, it's partnerships strategically through cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is not something we're able to build and manage on ourselves, by ourselves currently as a startup. So, trusting the proven experience of companies that have been doing it for 10 to 20 years is how we, build our trust.
Yeah, as somebody explained to me, is if as a startup you're effectively building a car, and you want to build the best possible car, you're not going to build every single piece yourself. You're going to go out and find the best in class for this piece and that piece and that piece. In cybersecurity, you're going to go with a company that's, yes, cost effective, but also is able to satisfy your cybersecurity needs. And it's far more effective to go find the best one out there than to try to build it in-house.
Yeah, and if I can be frank, because we're a tech company, but we're not a tech company like you guys. We don't have software engineers and so on the team to design our product. I honestly think it's a bit of a blind spot, and I'll use my personal experience to illustrate. To be quite honest, I didn't realize it was as big of a threat until I saw some of my peers have ransomware attacks, and we've started to see a lot more phishing attacks in the last 24 months. And so it was kind of an, oh shoot, kind of moment, right? It's one of those things that you don't think about as a small business, right? Like cybersecurity is a product you almost have to develop in-house that you're never going to sell to customers. So it's almost something you need, but that doesn't really create economic value to keep the business going. So it's one of those things that it's not front of mind when you're building the business. But then once you reach a certain size, you realize you've become a target and you need to kind of get your ducks in a row. So I think in general, in the small and medium business space, it is definitely, there's a gap there. And what I would say there is, what we've been doing personally is, in our business, bringing in kind of third-party providers who have these kind of cybersecurity packages, so that we're doing pen tests and trying to see, what are our weaknesses and how safe is our data, and, if somebody's trying to breach the walls, how do they get in, and what do we need to do to rectify that? So in any case, we're to be frank, quite a lot more reactive than I would like to be. It's kind of the reality of what it is to be in a business. You've got to be able to prioritize, and I would hazard a guess that that's probably a lot of SMBs in Canada that are in that same spot, that ultimately have to prioritize some things, and things like cybersecurity may just not get the budget they need. And so it's just a question of, okay, what do we need to do if we're going to recognize that reality, that there just isn't maybe the energy that we would like to put into it.
There's a couple of questions also came in about attracting and retaining talent. I'd be very interested to get the different answers from the different perspectives on the panel. And Jeff writes, in regards to attracting and retaining talent, we offer a competitive package for our industry. However, public sector salaries are on average 20% higher. Do you experience similar challenges, and what are you doing to differentiate yourselves? That's an interesting concept, especially in a city like Ottawa, where, where the public sector makes up a large chunk of employment.
Yeah, and we've got a few former public servants on our team, and I'm just trying to think of, you know, to be quite honest with you, I think the people that we want to attract are the people who are inspired by the mission and what we're trying to build and really believe in it. And yes, compensation is an element that people evaluate when they're looking at what do they do next, and you know, are they going to join a team? But I don't think it's the only element. I would say if compensation, if for a candidate compensation was the deciding factor, and it was, you know, I want, you know, how do I say this properly? I guess I don't want to hire people who compensation is their number one reason for joining Growcer. I think like what we do is we benchmark ourselves to, so it sounds like what the person asking the question is doing the same thing, benchmark themselves to other businesses in the area that are of a similar size for a similar role. And there are great services that offer that in Ottawa to be able to say, okay, what is the local landscape? So we want to pay on market for what we're hiring for, but ultimately I think there's a lot of other things that that should attract candidates, and those who aren't attracted for the right reasons, we don't want them anyway.
Sueling, what do you say? Because Ottawa really is in a fairly unique situation where a lot of these innovative startups are oftentimes competing with, I have to assume that the government is the largest employer in the city. And so there's that push-pull, love-hate that must be going on in Ottawa.
I remember years ago reading an article that said that actually compensation is number 7 on the list of what's important to an employee.
Really?
Yes, so although bad compensation goes further up, but if you're being fairly compensated, it's number 7. And so I think employers, and particularly, you know, SMEs, have an opportunity again to double down on the first 6, you know, so mission-based work. And we know, particularly in today's world, a lot of young leaders are interested in values-based organizations. You know, we had a thing on ESG earlier. You know, what is your business doing in terms of making a difference in the community? How, what is the work environment? Is there good work-life balance? Are people being recognized in different ways that are important to them? So there are ways to compete over and above compensation, but it is a challenge, obviously, especially when we have such a stronghold in public service, and they're typically better compensated financially, but there's an opportunity there. And then what Ryan was saying earlier too is like looking at how especially SMEs can be nimble in terms of creating work environments that work for particular people, customization, you know. So we just had a talent summit the other day, and our expert said, you know, we have to start looking at attracting talent the same way with the same focus that we look at attracting clients. And so that's what the world that we're in today.
We find at Orchard that if somebody's on the fence as to whether or not they want to join us, we give them a T-shirt with my face on it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and if that sends them running, they were not meant for the job. Ryan, what about you?
It's a good test. We should try the same one.
It's the Ben test.
Yeah.
It's the Ben
They're like,
test.
who's this on my shirt? I'm like, we did a panel with them once. It's fine. For us, great points by everybody. Mission, obviously, for us, the first point whenever we're hiring new talent, whether it's in sales, whether it's in tech, whether it's in ops, have you ever worked at a startup before? And do you know what that means? It's the first question we ask. Most people know, and then we dive a little bit deeper. From there, if we get, you know, the right answer, the right direction of answer we want in regards to there's a fit, and we continue through that process with them, we've been dynamic by offering flexible jobs. You know, we live in a world now where there's solopreneurs and entrepreneurs who are talking about an idea they want to do in 5 years. Like, these are the conversations. People are having these conversations in job interviews. You know, like, what drives you? Well, I have this side hustle. Well, I have this company, and, you know, I want to work in a startup to learn about this. People are open with that dialogue. Things we'd never say in job interviews 5, 10 years ago. Okay, and that's awesome.
I want to learn from you so I can then take it and start my own business.
And that's fine. And exactly. And 5 years ago, people would be like, they're out, you know, proprietary information. we're trying to foster an environment where it's like, hey, we want to support that. You know, the company does come first for the company's needs, but that takes people to drive those, you know, values and goals and missions. So for us, you know, I hate the term sweat equity, effort equity, you know, that's a big thing. Small companies now have access to legal services and knowledge about share structure and share class. You can set up everyone in your organization to get a small piece of the pie. And we trickle that through our offering to merchants. We trickle it through our offering to drivers.
Yeah.
Everyone should get fair compensation, a piece of the pie if they want to be there enough. So, you know, by offering effort equity, by offering them flexibility in their hours if they work from home, it ties to the job. If it's a work from home job, we'll discuss it with you. If it's, you know, a job driving, you have to work from your car. You know, these are conversations we have, right? But we're open and nimble with people. And as Sueling's points are fair, most people don't know that. Monetary compensation is nowhere near at the top of the list. It's flexibility. It's where do I work? It's what do you do when I'm in an emergency? What are your policies here? These questions are asked first now over what's the pay.
Sueling, you had something to
I was
add?
just going to say, so businesses absolutely have to be thinking about how to be competitive in talent, but there's also a huge role for us to play as economic developers and creating an environment that people want to come to Ottawa or to Toronto or to Vancouver or any of our other cities and towns across Canada. And it has to do with, you know, good education systems, excellent health care, home to be in, you know, mobility and transit. And so all of those things also have to be in place to support our business success as well.
You want to take this?
Just quickly. So I'm sure all of us can sort of speak to how inspired we are by young people and how they are changing corporate Canada and our organizations. And so Deloitte has just gone through a refreshed talent value proposition, and very much around, you know, bringing your whole self to work. And, you know, Corey and Ryan and Sueling have alluded to that, right? That it is, people have expectations around their opportunities for growth and mentorship and different projects and development. And can I bring my dog? And what are my policies when things are going, you know, south in my life? And all of those things, right? And the money, absolutely competitive, market-based. And at the same time, you know what these two gentlemen are doing, it's not for everyone, right? It's not. Like if you are, you know, risk averse, if you are, you know, anything that happens in those startups, right? If you're not willing to sort of hustle on all kinds of things that aren't in your job description, it may not be for you, but for a lot of people it is, and they're really values driven and drawn to these types of organizations.
That's so nice, thank you. We all deserve t-shirts that say, I love working 7 days a week.
Yeah, at our company, I think Thursday or Friday is called First Friday, Saturday is called Second Friday. Yeah.
We call long weekends 8-day work weeks if you're on the leadership team.
Hey, listen, this has been a lot of fun for me to get to know the four of you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your passion with everybody here. That wraps us up pretty much. So thanks to everybody. How about a round of applause for our panelists today?